For having me.
Great to have you here.
Sorry replacement, but I'll do what I can.
You're doing a great job. You are. It's Thursday. We're downhill to the weekend. So wait, are you working this weekend too?
I am. I'm working tomorrow too, and this weekend.
So filled in for you yesterday.
Thank you,
Brian,
so
today and tomorrow.
Today is your Thursday. It's my Tuesday.
That's right.
And for all of America, it's their Thursday too.
What's my Monday again? Because I took yesterday off.
I don't know.
So I'm just starting again. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us on this December 7th,
That's right.
2017.
Pearl Harbor Day,
right.
which we do honor, we do recognize, we talked about on this program. I mean, it's like 9/11 of our generation we'll never forget. Imagine the World War II generation. We're losing them too fast, but that moment changed history forever.
The greatest generation.
And the story we did in the last half hour about the fact that somebody who was there and saved so many lives finally being recognized after seeing a story on Fox by the Navy today.
Yeah. Well, all eyes now are on Senator Al Franken. There's speculation he's going to definitely have an announcement today. There's speculation he might resign.
That's right. It comes as Democrats turn on him, demanding that he step down.
Griff Jenkins live in our nation's capital with what we know about Al Franken. Griff?
Good morning, guys. Well, we know there's new sexual misconduct allegations. A seventh woman accusing Franken of trying to forcibly kiss her. An eighth saying he groped her posing for a photo. And if he does resign today, it will be the Democratic women of the Senate that forced him out in the tidal wave that began with New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand.
I do not feel that he should continue to serve. When we start having to talk about the differences between sexual assault and sexual harassment and unwanted groping, you are having the wrong conversation.
By the end of the day, 14 female Democratic senators were calling on him to resign, with his fellow Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar stopping short of calling for his resignation, but saying she was confident he will make the right decision. Minority Leader Chuck Schumer also joining the chorus of calls, saying he considers Franken a friend but should resign immediately. Some have questioned the timing of this Democratic outrage as Monica Crowley weighed in last night on Hannity.
It's politics, but it's also very strategic because they're teeing this up for 2018 and then 2020. They want to say, look, we took care of all of our perverts. We got rid of all of them. Oh, the Republicans still have a bunch of perverts. We're also going to run a woman.
Now, Franken's office has downplayed rumors of a resignation, but said the senator plans to make an announcement today. We're told it could possibly be on the Senate floor. We'll see what happens, guys.
We will indeed. All right, Griff Jenkins down on Capitol Hill. We thank you very much. Meanwhile, the President of the United States, I believe in the 1 o'clock hour yesterday, made the announcement.
He did it.
You know what? He was following through on a campaign pledge. He said, if you make me President of the United States, I will keep my promise. And after many years, the United States will recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and we will move our embassy there as soon as we can find the spot to put it.
We talked about history, Pearl Harbor. It felt like watching that announcement yesterday, you were watching history. And immediately after he made the announcement that we will recognize Israel as the eternal capital of Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Israel, you saw the projection of the American flag and the Israeli flag on the old city, which, having been there, it's amazing to think about. Bibi Netanyahu came out right away after being quiet for a couple of days, saying this is an amazing shift. It is a historic moment. U.S. is always...
That's what you're talking about right there.
If you've never been to Jerusalem, the old city walls, they surround the old city of Jerusalem, the Western Wall, all the things that are so significant for different faiths, extremely significant.
Right. Well, let's go to Jerusalem right now, because there are protests. There are live protests because there are so many people who are upset. Many international leaders, the Pope, unhappy with the President of the United States that he would announce this. And in fact, his critics say he has ruined the Mideast peace process, even though there really isn't much of a peace process.
Yes, that's
right.
The
last number of years.
Well, within minutes of that announcement, the U.S. embassies in Turkey and Jordan and Germany and Britain, they all issued security alerts saying that Americans need to be cautious because they were worried about the reaction. They were worried about the protests. Nikki Haley says we shouldn't live in fear. She said, actually, this is nothing more than just a recognition of reality because Jerusalem there, Israelis believe that Jerusalem is their capital already.
This is a completely predictable reaction of how the left and the international intelligentsia will react. Remember, Barack Obama passed a resolution declaring the Western Wall occupied territory, Eastern Jerusalem occupied territory. So this is a dispute that is not going to be solved at this moment. But at least the U.S. has come down squarely on the side of an ally in Israel.
Eric Erickson was on with us just about an hour ago, and he said this promise kept is what others in Washington have said out loud but never did anything about. Watch.
He's actually doing what all the politicians in Washington say they want to do when they know they don't have to. He's taking them at their word. I mean, just like he took Republicans at their word that they wanted to repeal Obamacare when they probably really didn't. He's moving the capital, recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, which, by the way, it already is. He's just recognizing reality. When every major politician, every presidential candidate, both parties of Congress in their platform documents, and a bipartisan resolution of Congress all declared that we should do exactly what he did. And now that he's done it, they're all like, oh, gosh, he can't do that.
And the protests we just showed, you know who's protesting? The Islamists who don't like this. And if the right people are protesting, then maybe you did the right thing.
The Palestinians are saying you can't make Jerusalem the eternal capital because it's our eternal capital. Yeah. So we will keep you posted on that. Except in the meantime, here in...
Except that it isn't.
Except that it isn't. Yeah. But just read the history books. But anyway.
Well, not only that, but our own U.S. Congress back in 1995 passed the Jerusalem Embassy Act, where we were supposed to move it. But every president has kicked the can down the road until now.
Well, it's a done deal. The president has declared the capital, and now we're moving on to the FBI, because there's a lot of information here. We're all asking, what did Mueller know? When did he know it? Because the ousted guy, the guy who got the demotion, Peter Strzok, he was that top FBI agent that was investigating Hillary, investigating Russia for a year. He apparently got that demotion to HR last July. So he stayed on those investigations for a year.
Yeah. And so Senator Ron Johnson of he's the chairman of the House Homeland, or rather the Senate Homeland Security Department. He wants to know, when did the Inspector General of the Department of Justice realize there were these text messages? When did Mr. Mueller realize there were text messages? Was this a violation of the Hatch Act? And have you looked into allegations that other senior management at the FBI were involved in something political?
That's right. It's all raising concerns about, was this investigation legitimate from the beginning? Was it above board from the beginning? Do we have to investigate the investigators? We had the judge, Andrew Napolitano, on. How do you do that? You shouldn't have to do that, because you want to assume your justice and intelligence departments are above that.
Yeah.
But we had Representatives Gates and Meadows. They've been out there from the Freedom Caucus talking about this with some suggestions about where we may go next. Take a listen.
The Attorney General needs to do his job and end this witch hunt charade. We have a clear double standard, and you see it and the American people see it. Hillary Clinton's being investigated by her own fan club before the 2016 election, and now the only way you seem to get on Mueller's team is to demonstrate a hatred for Donald Trump. I think that the way Mueller built his team was finding people who had a bias against the president and doing everything he could to include them in this investigation.
The time is now for Jeff Sessions to do his job. And if he doesn't do his job, he needs to step aside and let somebody else do it.
Wow.
Gates is lying. Hillary was investigated by her own fan club, he said.
Such a great line. And it crystallizes it. It really does.
Plus, every day there are more nuggets of information pointing that way. John Solomon at The Hill had a story where he quoted Ron DeSantis, congressman from Florida, who was told by a retired FBI supervisor that the FBI deputy director, Andrew McCabe, remember him? We talked about him last year. His wife ran for Congress down in Virginia. Got $700,000 as a Democrat from Terry McAuliffe's PAC and stuff like that. Anyway, Andrew McCabe apparently told the FBI not to call Benghazi attack terrorism, even after the FBI findings were that al-Qaeda directed it and it was terrorism. Of course, that was before the election.
That's right.
So changing the language there, and then there were reports of the language being changed in the memo.
Nothing to see here. It's all just the FBI.
Just watering it down. The fan club.
The fan club, nothing to see here.
Ron DeSantis said this about that. What operational reason would there be to issue an edict to agents telling them, in the face of virtually conclusive evidence to the contrary, not to categorize the Benghazi attack as a result of terrorism by placing the interests of the Obama administration over the public's interests? The order is yet another data point highlighting the politicization of the FBI.
Because don't forget, when did the Benghazi attacks happen? Right before the
7 weeks.
2012 elections.
Right.
It couldn't be terror, because that would destroy their narrative.
Because we had al-Qaeda on the run. They were on their heels. That was the official story.
GM was alive and bin Laden was dead.
It just makes it seem like it happened. They all sit in a room in the White House underneath the ground, and they're like, hold on. This can't happen before the election. We have to change the narrative. Just get through the election, and then we'll reveal the truth.
The new FBI director is going to be on Capitol Hill today. I'm sure you're going to watch it live right here on the channel.
TV.
All right.
It's true. Jillian.
Hey.
Good morning.
Hey, Jillian. If you don't watch it live, you guys will talk about it tomorrow morning.
Well, we have Al
got you
Franken's
covered.
announcement today, and we have the FBI director being questioned today.
A lot of stuff happening today, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, we do have some headlines, starting with a Fox News alert. Near hurricane force winds expected to worsen the already devastating wildfires in Southern California today. The latest fire sparking near the Bel Air neighborhood of Los Angeles, forcing thousands to evacuate. Those winds fueling the blaze could reach up to 80 miles per hour in some places. On top of that, there is no rain in the forecast for the next week. Also breaking right now, it's just a matter of time. North Korea threatening war with the U.S. overnight. The chilling warning coming after a U.S. supersonic bomber flew over South Korea yesterday in a show of force as part of a large week-long military exercise. And we now know there were supposed to be 2 bombers in the air. The second one was grounded after experiencing a maintenance issue while taxiing for takeoff. Even the First Lady is a fan of fast food. Melania Trump and Second Lady Karen Pence spotted at the famous Texas burger chain Whataburger. No word on what they ordered for themselves, but we do know they treated the press pool to French fries. They were in Texas meeting with first responders and victims in the wake of Hurricane Harvey. That's a look at your headlines. I don't know. That made me a little hungry, guys.
Whataburger. Love that. They do have great fries.
They do. It's
Thanks,
good
Jillian.
food. Mm-hmm. You've never tried it, have you? We gotta buy some for you.
All fries are good fries.
All fries are good fries. Are there
Sweet potato fries?
No, those are
I don't
so
like
good.
sweet potatoes.
What? Delicious.
They're okay.
And when they're
I like
crispy,
regular
Put gravy on them.
the dipping sauce.
So good.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, America.
Thank you.
President Trump taking historic steps to fulfill a campaign promise, something his predecessors failed to keep, declaring Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
They failed to deliver. Today, I am delivering.
In his first interview, a Fox News exclusive, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, joins us live from Tel Aviv.
And remember when people were screaming at the sky over President Trump?
Yep.
Their new message for anyone daring to call them snowflakes? Snowflakes? Well, they find that offensive.
Welcome back. President Trump making good on a campaign promise his predecessors, they all failed to keep, declaring Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and beginning the process to move our embassy there from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Here to react in an exclusive interview is the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mr. David Friedman. Ambassador, thank you so much for being with us. What is your reaction to this?
Well, Ainsley, I am really proud of the president. I thought this decision was bold. It was courageous. It was really smart. It was the right decision at the right time. And I think it reflects the popular will. You know, after all, I think only 6 months ago, the Senate recognized yet again the centrality of Jerusalem to the state of Israel by a vote of 90-0. You know, how often does the Senate agree unanimously on anything? And I also think it's the best path for peace. And so I think this puts the United States very much in the right place, and it puts the president very much on the right side of history.
Mr. Ambassador, how does this put us on the right path for peace when you see, we were just looking at live demonstrations in Jerusalem. Hamas is angry. They're encouraging people to do all sorts of stuff. How does the president's decision put you on the right path for peace?
So, you know, we're obviously concerned about the demonstrations, and the United States has taken all the appropriate precautions to protect American citizens abroad. But if you look at the peace process, if you will, over the past 25 years, the Palestinians have had a basket of issues that they've been attempting to advance during the course of the negotiations. Now, I'm not going to comment on the merits of those issues, but they've had their issues, and whatever issues they had yesterday, they still have today. The president made very clear he wasn't seeking to foreclose any of those issues. But here's what the president did want to foreclose. He wanted to foreclose the fantasy, and that's all it is, a fantasy, that somehow Jerusalem could be disconnected from the state of Israel. The president didn't want the Israelis to show up at the bargaining table and be forced to negotiate for something that they already had. That wasn't the right structure for negotiations. So, you know, look, we understand and expected the emotional reaction, the disappointment, but people who are demonstrating today did not listen carefully enough to the president's speech. The president remains committed to a peace process. He's committed to a good faith negotiation of all the final status issues. What he did yesterday was to simply speak the truth and to develop for the first time a foreign policy based upon reality rather than fantasy.
The president is a negotiator taking a new approach at a negotiation that hasn't gone well for a long time. Ambassador David Friedman, thank you for joining us. Certainly a historic day yesterday. Thank you.
All right, straight ahead on this Thursday.
I always like this music. Time now for your news by the numbers. First, $200 million. That's how much NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell's 5-year contract extension is worth. That's right. Divide that by 5. That's $40 million a year. The deal comes after Goodell faced heavy criticism from fans and the president for not requiring players to stand for the national anthem. So don't do your job well, $200 million. All right, next, $26,000. That's how much hackers wanted North Carolina's largest county to pay up. But they won't get a dime. Mecklenburg County officials refusing to pay cyber crooks holding government servers ransom. The hacker believed to be from Iran or the Ukraine. And finally, 20. That's the age of the hacker responsible for the Uber data breach that exposed the information of 57 million people, including possibly me. Reuters reports the company paid him $100,000 through a security program so that nobody found out. Wow.
Well, from the Carolina backwoods all the way to the White House, Andrew Jackson lived a remarkable life, but it was his heroics on the battlefield that actually saved America.
Over there were thousands of British troops. What they wanted was over there. That was New Orleans. What they wanted to control was over there, the Mississippi. What's at stake? The future of the country. What did Andrew Jackson do? Win.
Joins us right now is the author of Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans, Fox and Friends Zone, Brian Kilmeade. Gets a little cold here in New York. Suddenly he's off to Orlando. Look at that.
Brian, it's weird when we get a card that says your name on it. Brian Kilmeade, co-host of Fox and Friends. Steve said, how do we pronounce his last name?
Well, listen, I just think you got to be in your best behavior because, you know, I'm judging you. First off, I don't need a card today, and your makeup people are very nice, as well as the hair division. But that was 110 degrees shooting that in New Orleans. Here it's 85 and humid. There it's 12. But the whole thing is finally going to air. The special is going to air Andrew Jackson, Hero Under Fire. When we started the book 2 years ago, this was nothing to do with the news. I just thought it was going to be a great history piece. I had no idea how similar this host of The Apprentice would be to Andrew Jackson, who ends up in the Oval Office. And then both get under fire for some certain things they say. Both are very similar candidates for what they did. But that battle in particular is where Andrew Jackson made his name.
So, Brian, what is the difference between the book and the special?
Well, the book is the Battle of New Orleans, and in terms we lay out the whole thing, how it happened and how we pulled it off. The special is going to be Andrew Jackson, Hero Under Fire. We go to Jackson Square where there's a group of people who want that statue down. The guy who saved New Orleans for the future president of the United States, they want his statue down. Then we go in front of the White House, and we go into the White House, and we talk about the similarities between President Trump as well as President Jackson, and why Ronald Reagan, FDR, Harry Truman, especially Abraham Lincoln, looked to Andrew Jackson as a prototype and many of the decisions he made. In fact, here is one of the questions I posed was how Jackson and Trump, when they took the presidency, how they were both under fire going in and then once they got the job. If you want to take a listen.
You'd read the paper, and then he'd write comments in the margins. Is this good or bad? Or there's one article in particular that really took him to task, and there's a great big X through the whole article in ink.
Donald Trump brags on being a counterpuncher. Well, so was Andrew Jackson in battle, as you know very well, because you write about it, and in politics, and also in duels. And Andrew Jackson was in a duel with a perfect shot as his opponent. He let him shoot first. He opened his chest and said, "Go for it," and the perfect shot, and apparently apparently missed. Andrew Jackson didn't even flinch. He coolly, deliberately aimed and shot the man dead. Afterwards, they learned he had been shot 2 inches from his heart. He carried that bullet till he died.
Brian, Andrew Jackson had no Twitter, but he wished he had.
Right. And he also used to pick up the newspapers, make marks, and get a hold of those reporters, much like I think the current president today. I also think it's interesting to see back then they settled their disputes by shooting each other. Just anyone who thinks that we're in an unprecedented situation in terms of bare-fisted politics, this is kind of mellow compared to the way it used to be. But again, both of them do not know how to back down from a fight. And now Jackson's presidency is being hit. He's not perfect. The Trail of Tears he's responsible for. He had slaves. No one could excuse that. He was a person of his time. We understand that. But again, evaluating his presidency today, the way he lived 200 years ago, is forgetting the fact that he was the most famous man in America who was orphaned at 13 years old. This guy should have been a criminal. He should have been a vagrant. He should have been a no-name. Instead, he was a congressman, a senator, attorney general, a legendary general, and a two-term president. That, to me, and we stumbled onto this, that's what America's about. Although now we have university systems and we have social programs. Back then, they said, basically, you're on your own. You have no family. Your brothers are dead, your mom passed away, your dad died before you were born. Good luck, son. And he said, fine, I'll do the best I can. And man, I thought he did pretty good.
An extraordinary American. So. That's why you wrote the book on it. And in fact, you're going to be later today on December 7th at 1 o'clock at Books A Million in Sanford, Florida. Then at 5 o'clock this afternoon, you're going to be at the Barnes & Nobles at the Villages.
And then tomorrow,
that is our base.
At noon at the Kravitz Center for the Performing Arts in West Palm Beach. And of course, it's going to be on this program.
And the special is Sunday night, 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock. And Brian, I think it's great that you have brought this to light for so many people, especially the younger generation that doesn't know anything about Andrew Jackson.
Like me.
And now we will. No, you're not. You're not saying
You actually fight in the wars, Pete, so I think that you know about all this stuff. And he went to Princeton, guys. I don't know if you know. Yeah. So they make you learn history at Princeton. So it's exciting. So I love talking about it.
Well, Andrew Jackson couldn't be a more relevant figure at this time. So kudos to you.
There you go. All right, Brian, travel safely, and the folks are going to come see you for the book and watch the special this weekend. Thank you, sir.
Brian, tell them all to get dressed.
Take care. All right, everybody, please get dressed, and at the end of the day, remember to get undressed.
Okay.
All right. Wise words. All right, stick around. Joining us live next is Newt Gingrich.
And remember when some liberals screamed at the sky over...
I was born in a small town, and I live in a small town.
Once upon a time, he was John Cougar. Then he went back to his real name, Sean Mellencamp, as you look at the small town of Washington, D.C., where
Not
later
so small
today,
anymore, Steve.
It's pretty small. It's only 10 by 10 miles.
Swamp is very deep, very wide.
Let's bring in Newt Gingrich, Fox News contributor, former Speaker of the House. He ran for president, and he's the author of Vengeance, a big New York Times bestseller. Mr. Speaker, good morning to you.
Good morning to you. There's a picture of the book.
Good morning. And by the way, I just want to mention about Brian's last segment. When I wrote Understanding Trump, I have a whole section on how parallel Trump and Andrew Jackson are. And I think that Brian's book on Andrew Jackson is remarkably helpful for people who'd want to have a better understanding of how President Trump operates. Jackson was a remarkable figure, and Brian did a great service to the country by writing that book.
Well, there you go. All right, let's talk a little bit about the people who serve our nation. It looks, Mr. Speaker, to a lot of people that when you look at some of the things that have been revealed in the last week or two regarding senior management at the FBI, that there could be a political bias clouding the determination whether or not to go forward with prosecutions and whatnot. And you look at the case of Peter Strzok, who was text messaging apparently to the tune of 10,000 text messages to his girlfriend, who is a lawyer, apparently also on the special counsel. And you wonder, how did they find out about this? How did the Inspector General find out about it? How did Mr. Mueller find out about it? There are a lot of questions that are really perplexing people.
Well, first of all, if you have 10,000 text messages, you have to wonder, when did they get any work done? Apparently spending a lot of their time just texting each other.
Can you imagine what's in those text messages?
I think this is... Well, I hope they're going to be revealed presently. Yeah. Look, I think, first of all, that we now know that had Hillary won, the corruption would have gotten bigger, it would have gotten deeper. We have never learned any of this. And I think it's pretty appalling. The level of corruption we're beginning to see in the FBI. I mean, it's clear, for example, that the number 2 person at the FBI should be recusing himself because his wife received hundreds of thousands of dollars of donations as a Democratic candidate. How can you seriously say this guy's neutral? It's clear that Mueller was bringing in people who are aggressive Democratic donors as the lawyers. Several of whom have very bad reputations for overreaching as prosecutors, have been knocked down by the Supreme Court on 9-0 votes. And I originally thought Mueller might be an honest and a reasonable man, but the more I watched who they were hiring, how they were organizing, what they're doing, and ask yourself this simple question. How can Hillary's assistants all have lied? The key assistants clearly lied to the FBI. Mm-hmm. Not a single one of them has a felony conviction. On the other hand, if you've served your country for 35 years, as General Flynn did, now, and the argument is not, by the way, anything that happened in the campaign. It's not anything about collusion. It's about something he did during the transition when he was the president's appointed transition leader for national security. The difference in approach to Clinton corruption, which gets a pass, and General Flynn is, I think, a sign of how sick the system is.
Mr. Speaker, how then could you restore trust? Is it re-looking at Hillary Clinton? Is it doing this investigation differently? What do you do?
Well, the first thing you do is you get the Congress to do its job. Why is McNabb, the number 2 guy at the FBI, not recusing himself? Why is he in a position of authority? You go back and you look at why was Hillary not put under oath? I mean, she could never be charged as Flynn was because they never put her under oath. So this whole thing, Comey, I think, clearly was engaged. The system clearly at the very top. The average FBI agent is still as honest and as serious and as hardworking as ever. But at the very top, the Justice Department and the FBI became corrupted. And I think we have to be honest and use that language. This is not an occasional mistake. This was covering up for the next president, they thought, covering up for their foundation, covering up for their relationship with Russia and Uranium One, covering up for the entire process of investigation. How could she delete 33,000 emails and not have been guilty of something? How could she have a private server in her basement illegally against all State Department rules and not be guilty of something? And why is the witch hunt over here for people who've served their country in battle and who are basically decent guys and who are getting picked off, frankly, I think, and Michael Ledeen wrote a great article about this, who knows General Flynn very well, and Ledeen said, look, the FBI has the power to tell you we're going to bankrupt your family, we're going to go after your son. Now, do you want to take a minor plea and get this over with, or do you want us to destroy you? Yeah. Well, that's not justice. That's the worst kind of third world petty dictatorship exercised by bureaucrats.
Corrupt, and it seems like there's a double standard. Mr. Speaker, we also wanted to ask you about this. Yesterday, the president, as you know, declared Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Pope Francis immediately slammed the president yesterday morning for recognizing Jerusalem as the capital.